What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about impressing the subconscious mind with empowering beliefs and how important that is to do in the present moment. Really, the alternative is to unconsciously impress your subconscious mind, a lot of times with undesirable things. You know, it's something I've recognized this pattern over and over again, just in my own self. You know, the amounts of times where throughout the day, I will have an errant thought that is very undesirable, for one, and fearful, for two, and ultimately not even what I want. But it's almost like this weird kind of program where it's like, well, it's normal to just unconsciously think about the worst case scenarios all the time, when you can alternatively think about the best case scenarios, and both of them are equally as valid. You know, so it's like boils down to a choice in the present moment of, am I going to just unconsciously live the present moment and pressing my subconscious mind with undesirable, fearful things, or and then experience suffering, diminished states of consciousness where they just more chaos, more dysfunction, less harmony. You know, is that really what I desire to do just because it's normal? You know, normal in my experience has been kind of a form of insanity, you know, on a lot of different levels, you know, one of which, you know, is just believing a lot of things that are not true or an error, or just like holding on to these beliefs that are like, well, I got taught this as a child, so it must still be true. You know, it's in not letting go of these things. It's in not experiencing unknown situations. You know, so much of like getting older feels like, oh, you know, just creating this habitual Groundhog Day where you're safe and it's just what you expect constantly. But when you start to impress your subconscious minds with new ideas, more hopeful things, more optimism, more like expectancy of awesome things happening, a big part of letting go of the fears is embracing this unknown, not worrying about how it's going to happen, because it's not. Who knows how it's going to happen? That's the fulfilling part is in this like the impressing, but then the expectancy that I don't know how this will play out. It's just always constantly unfolding in this way. You know, letting go of like the past beliefs of like, the future is this utopia thing that's always like the ideal. It's never the present moment, which is like life. It's always this utopia. When you're dead, then you go to this heavenly realm where it's like things work out and are harmonious. But the thing of it is like, you're always like dealing with your own consciousness. So it's like whether you're in like a vacation, you know, where you're in an awesome place, you still got like the same bullshit dramas, the same limiting beliefs, the same assumptions that will put you in a mental prison regardless of what realm or what space you're occupying. And with that, you know, comes with a whole new thing to do, which is, hey, I'm going to start really focusing on what is already manifested in my life. For one, I'm going to steward or take care of whatever's already manifested that I'm actually dealing with physically and tangibly in the present moment. And I'm going to do that without being hysterical, without being chaotic, without just freaking out that the worst case scenario is going to happen. You know, for example, you know, if you've been watching the channel for any period of time, you know, I just fixed my vehicle. You know, I had this whole series of events where it was overheating, ended up replacing a belt, replacing a thermostat housing because I got rammy with it and just didn't even need to do that. But then I got rammy with it, which then caused a leak, which made it so I had to fix it. But then, you know, next thing you know, I'm driving to a job, and I go to the gas station, I get a cup of coffee. It was fucking cold too. And so I go to the gas station, come out, next thing you know, I'm backing the car out and just pop. My tire just explodes, and it's like, what is going on? And so I end up jacking the car up, taking the tire off, putting the donut on. But in the process of doing that, I realized like the shock or the strut, whatever you call that, the springy coil thing that bounces when your car bounces, that spring broke and just stabbed the side of my tire and popped it. And it's like, oh, fantastic, because I have another vehicle, a van, that has the exact same problem, where it's like driving and I hit a pothole and it popped out, which then had a cascade of issues. It's been on blocks for like a year. But basically I drove on it when it was fucked up like that. Then it got the axle fucked up, and it was like a whole series of events. Well, next thing you know, then my wife's, and this is all within one thing after another type situation. And then next thing you know, my wife calls me, says the check engine light on the other vehicle we have is like now is on. It's just like, okay, well, I'm getting ready to go fix that problem. I had ordered the parts, so those have come in. I got their oxygen sensors, so shouldn't be a big ordeal. But then, if you listen to the chaos mind, oh, it's going to be a terrible problem. Oh, it's good. Those bolts these sensors are going to be a bitch to get out. There won't be no space. I got to crawl underneath the car. I could possibly die in this repair. The car could fall off the jack and just crush me to death. All these fears and hysterias that are just getting impressed into the subconscious mind. Does that serve a function? Is that helpful? Yeah. Maybe minutely helpful in the sense that, I would rather it be very harmonious. I'd rather be peaceful and be in a state of flow fixing this car. The car has less than 100,000 miles on it, so the sensors should come out no problem. Should be able to get the new ones on no problem. And in that, you're starting to impress the subconscious mind with what you want, what you desire, versus what you fear. And ultimately, once you start to realize that creation functions under a correspondence, a mental law, where it's like the stuff that you're believing, impressing onto the subconscious mind doesn't care. It's non-selective. So if you are impressing it with fears, limitations, worst case scenarios, it will outpicture that into the screen of space. And that's going to be the shit that you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be like this classic scenario. You wake up late, then you stub your toe, and then you start to spiral. You hit every light in town. You're about out of gas. You have to go get gas, and somebody's dicking with lotto tickets for 15 minutes. And this cascade of issues starts to manifest of the undesirable. And until you start to choose to change states, that state, being in chaos, frustration, difficulty, distortion, it's like the opposite of harmony, flow. And it could just be neutral things, but you're in such a fucked up state of mind at this point that you're just lashing out and attacking it, attacking everything that's going on. It's about consciously living, realizing that, hey, the stuff that I'm thinking about, that I'm impressing on myself, is going to be outpictured, and at least in my perception of what's going on, I could be enjoying the flow of this event, stuff I'm moving around. I just finished doing a pretty big paint job. I finished it was like an upstairs hallway, two bedrooms, and a walk-in closet. Plus, it needed some outlets changed and new light fixtures. It's kind of a renovation type thing, but you can go through that just being frustrated, difficult, and you're just like, oh, this is such a bitch to do. Oh, I got to get up and down. And you start telling yourself all of these hysterical things and all these undesirable things. Or you could be just in a flow state, enjoying the day. Normally what I do during work is I just listen to like audiobooks. I was listening to a lot of metaphysical audiobooks. Dr. Joseph Murphy's books, a handful of those. I was doing this job for a couple weeks, but it's all about, for one, your mental diet, then more importantly, what you're impressing yourself with, knowing that non-selectively is going to, manifest in a way that's going to fulfill those beliefs. And so when it comes to starting to be more consciously aware of what you're doing, it's not to sit there and shame and guilt yourself when you've like gone down like an unconscious rabbit hole in your own self. You get triggered, now you're just out in the weeds. But it's when you recognize, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Do I really want this? Am I focused on what I don't want again? And in that, in that space of like, am I choosing what I don't want when I could choose what I do want, and it'll non-selectively play out just as easily? The only difference is in the faith, because like the old kind of cursed mindset of separateness was always, everything's separate. You're an innocent little victim that not your fault for habitually thinking worst case scenarios and then they manifest. Couldn't possibly be you. But when you do take ownership of it, and you start with what is already manifested, because it's an exact externalization of your consciousness and your beliefs, and it's a perfect mirror to this inner consciousness, this inner man, this whatever language works for you to describe this, because it's something that you can start to tangibly experience yourself just by shifting your mindset. You start seeing how stuff starts to be mirrored back to you. And especially when you change your mental diet and you're not listening to like the faithless that are constantly in fear of the future, when you're not in fear of this future, because you realize that the future is a reflection of your subconscious implantings of the past, that what you've been doing in the present moment is what you're going to be reaping in the future. So if you're impressing yourself with hopeful, faith-filled things where you're realizing that everything's working under this divine order, that you're blessed, that you and God are connected in consciousness, that this dynamic between your conscious and your subconscious mind is something that you are actively doing, where in the past you unconsciously just let it go and just like thought whatever whatever the TV thought, or whatever you put on pedestals of people, whatever they say, that's what you think. This is more about originating thoughts by having a relationship with infinite intelligence, the subconscious mind, to kind of you can impress a belief with, I'm always being led to the thoughts that bring creativity and joy. And just allowing God to do it, to impress your mind, and then just be still. And then when you least expect it, boom, you get some thoughts that answer that question. It's very reliable. It's something that as you just like put it to the test and demonstrate these things over and over to yourself, you start to see, by connecting the dots, like looking back, like, okay, I was thinking this way about this situation, and oh, I was right. Well, the idea that you're always right, you really need to start to question now. It's like, are you right because you're right, or are you right just because it manifested your beliefs? So to test that, you start facing the things that maybe you're afraid of and growing your faith. Because ultimately, you do that by growing in the present moment. All these desires, all these things that are telling you what you aren't, you don't want to just be in these states of want and desire, because you're constantly then, again, focusing on the undesirable, what you don't have. But you start focusing on what is already inherently here, that is functioning, and starting to grow that. And as you start to focus on gratitude, if like, thanks, that I can have these thoughts, and then through not needing to know how it's going to happen, I just be expecting good things to happen to me, and they do. And then you just believe it more and more, and so you start building this positive momentum, whereas like the world is on this like downward momentum of self-destruction, which you can see as like the COVID shit, and you can just like kind of see this pattern over and over again just by how it affects you. Ultimately, you don't need to worry about the world and other people as much as like, oh you got to constantly just, the others are the most important. It's like, you need to love God first, which God is within you. So it's like you got to really work on that relationship, with this inner relationship between you and God, which is within. And then you can actually help other people. Because if you're constantly just like needing energy from other people, or just, I need you to fix my problems for me, and I need all this help, all the time, it's like, that's not really a good position to help others. It's like, you got to kind of breathe your own oxygen mask before you help other people, because otherwise you're just projecting trauma and bullshit on other people. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna bounce more work on this car. I've got the rest of the day to do that. I finish that job, like I said, and I'm start the next one tomorrow, which has been really nice with a new hip, doing these like jobs, because for one, I spent like 20 something years like used to like a leg hurting and working. It's nice that it's not hurting, and being able to work is like a different level, which is like kind of focusing my attention on like the positive, on what I do like, and things that are good and going correctly according to me. But ultimately, to know God, God feels good. So it's like, feeling good is a very big deal. It's like, if you are feeling not, if you're feeling like anxious and fearful and angry and shit, like, not to say that that's what you are, but God is within you. And so like God's happiness and joy is within you somewhere for you to discover. And it's like, as you start to focus on embodiment of that more and more, so you start to feel better, and like just knowing that, hey, when I'm feeling good, I'm feeling God. That's a good kind of like quick thing that impresses the subconscious mind in a positive way. But with that being said, I think I'm gonna bounce. So I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. Appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Link in the description. Yeah, other than that, I think I'm going to bounce. So until the next now, God bless.